Good afternoon, everybody. Greetings to you all. We are here today to give brief statements on contemporary developments in the state of Tigray. We duly understand that our people are worried, not because there are some significant developments on the ground, but because of some deliberate decisions of some of our former comrades and some of our former colleagues. The gist of the matter is what's going on in Tigray, as my comrade Amanel duly mentioned earlier, is there was some efforts to restore constitutional order in some isolated local governments of Tigray. They are just a handful out of dozens of local governments in Tigray. And this was misrepresented to as wider audience as possible to allege that there is some uncontrollable situation emerging in Tigray, and more specifically, there is a danger to the Koha, and hence a call for intervention to save the Koha and so on. This is really a wild exaggeration, to say the least, because this is power arrangement in Tigray emanates from two basic documents. One of them is, of course, the Constitution. When I say the Constitution, I mean the Federal Constitution, the 1995 Ethiopian Federal Constitution, and of course, the Tigray Constitution, which is part of the Federal Constitution. And the second major political, legal document is the Cessation of Hostilities Agreement document, which is commonly referred to as the Pretoria Agreement, taking after the city it was signed. And accordingly, it's very obvious for those who closely follow the developments in Tigray, and of course very obvious for the people of Tigray, that power at the regional state level is divided between multiple stakeholders after the signing of the Koha, and the TPLF's share is 50% plus one of all the seats in the cabinet of the interim regional administration, and all local governments are, like elsewhere in Ethiopia, determined by the last election. We know that the last election was, relatively speaking, conducted long ago, but there is nothing exceptional when it comes to Tigray. This is what works throughout the country. Unfortunately, those who were supposed to serve the interests of the people of Tigray and those who were expected to uphold the raison d'etre, the founding principles, the objectives, and the mission of the Tigray interim administration didn't really abide by internal consensus that was reached in the last Congress immediately before establishing the Tigray interim regional administration. Neither are they upholding any of the constitutional principles and, of course, follow-up laws and decisions of duly constituted organs of the state. This is how they are attempting to nullify the constitutional order. We know that all Warada or district level governments in Tigray do have their own councils. The same is true about the Abia or sub-district level governments, or we may call them the localities. And of course, there is an arrangement about the zonal level governments. And accordingly, the councils decide who will run their respective district or local government or anything thereof. That's the ABC of democracy. Nonetheless, the rogue splinter that used to be part of the TPLF before the Congress, and many of whose members happen to hold some key powers in the Tigray interim regional administration, decided to sideline the nascent democracy in Tigray, remove officials that were duly appointed by the local councils, regardless of the law, regardless of the decisions of the local councils, and so on. Unfortunately, they present this as some kind of reform. I don't know what that kind of reform is. I don't know a reform that takes a nascent democracy to dictatorship at all. I think the name reform is unfitting at all, to say the least. And yet, they claim that whenever there is an attempt to correct this kind of unconstitutional moves, somebody is conspiring, more so the TPLF, the TDF, the people of Tigray maybe, in general are accused for conspiring against the Tigray interim regional administration. Of course, this dictatorial move, the attempt to install puppets, I would say, from above or from outside, succeeded temporarily only in few, as I said earlier, in few pockets of Tigray. And of course, the people of Tigray were mad about this. The people of Tigray, the Tigray Armed Forces, popularly known as, and affectionately, of course, known as the TDF, or according to Zokoha, the TPLF combatants. By the way, we know that the TDF is far more beyond that the rank and file of the TDF. All Tigrayans of all walks of life are represented in the TDF, so I'm not calling for some kind of misrepresentation here, but all significant forces in Tigray and the overwhelming majority of the people of Tigray are really furious about this move. Tigray is in no way, in no position to condone or to shoulder dictatorship. And hence, they called for these dictatorial impulses, attempts that already added some fuel to the misery of the people of Tigray to be corrected as soon as possible. This was in the open air. And hence, everybody complied. But as I said earlier, this has to do only with like local governments that I can count with the fingers of my one hand, okay? So, despite all this, there was a serious media hype because, as I said, some of our former colleagues, comrades, deliberately decided to present it so, and we know there could be opportunists who would be happy to grab this kind of opportunity. The people of Tigray do know this. We are not surprised at all as a party because this has been raised in many different meetings, but today it's in the open air for all of us to hear, to react, to understand the situation. But yet, it couldn't stop from worrying our people. But we assure our people that we didn't yet lose hope on the Koha, and we also believe our partners, our peace partners, won't be misled by this kind of irresponsible acts. In fact, to a certain extent, because some of our former comrades are raising issues that has never been raised by themselves, by our peace partners, they could be surprised. That's my personal opinion. So I don't think this will result in any uncontrollable situation, or this will be used as any kind of excuse to resort to any act that could potentially endanger or actually endanger the cessation of hostilities agreement. Well, we believe we are still in contact with our peace partners. We didn't hear much from them actually, except that we should really sit down, negotiate, talk about issues that are still outstanding, mainly when it comes to the main contents of Zokoha. But, I believe sane minds are willfully speaking what they are speaking, because some of the things make you wish that you don't live this long to hear what you hear. Even, as I said earlier, for people who have some insider information, some of the allegations are really, I can't imagine them in my wildest dreams, and absolutely wrong, and of course, absolutely against Zokoha itself. There were also some attempts to deprive Tigray of its capabilities, to defend itself, and of course, to negotiate. The TDF is one such institution. The TDF is built out of necessity. No one in Tigray was really interested to join an armed struggle, as we know. Everybody knows this. The ranks and the files of the TDF are full of people who were in their farmland, in their farming activities, who were in their professional engagements, teachers, health professionals, engineers, students, who still dream to get the best education as much as possible and to have a career. But instead of working with all other forces in Tigray, with the utmost possible coordination and support towards each other effort, we hear in the open air that DDR is selectively targeted, while our people are languishing under brutal occupation, while Tigray's autonomy is again being infringed, while IDPs are languishing in IDP camps, while Tigray has never been represented in the federal government institutions long after 2.5 years after the signing of the QUA. It's crazy to imagine that some people who really contributed during Tigray's armed confrontation to survive as a nation, as a regional state, to resort to this kind of shabby excuses to dismantle the very institutions that they participated in, that they fought for, and of course, sadly enough, to call for an intervention to settle Tigray's political problems. The TPLF believes there is always a peaceful solution for all kinds of political problems. As the saying goes, if there is a problem, there is a real problem. There always is a real solution. So we believe we might have political differences here. That's obvious. We do have, of course. But there was no compelling reason to go to the extent that others, not to mention our past, not to mention even our current level of not really reconciled, fully trusted relationships, to solve Tigray's outstanding problems, and not even through some kind of amicable means, but also by the brute of force. We found this very unacceptable, very sad, to say the least. And of course, we still maintain that there is a hope to solve problems, be they emanate from within Tigray or from outside of Tigray, amicably, peacefully, and through negotiation. We uphold principles, the QUA, peace, the demand of the people of Tigray in the strongest possible terms. The people of Tigray has been subjected to genocide by multiple forces from near and from afar, and we don't really wish any more bullet to be fired in the land of Tigray. This is rather unfortunate, very disgraceful news that shocks everybody. We understand that. But again, we believe that our peace partners won't be lured to this kind of allegations, and we, of course, believe that the international community will understand the situation and, of course, stand in upholding the contents and the principles behind the QUA. Had the TPLF been in search of some reasons to challenge the QUA, it's again out there. It's obvious for everybody, for anyone, any curious observer, to point out that the main contents of the QUA, particularly when it comes to the survival and the national interest of Tigray, are yet to be implemented. My comrade Amaniel has listed them earlier in Tigrinya. I also tried the same. But I guess they are also out there for everyone to see. They are very clear. They are not ambiguous. And the TPLF had every opportunity to raise all of them, some of them, and challenge, or at least evaluate the state of the Koha. The TPLF doesn't need to resort to, I'm not undermining the importance of local governments here, but as compared to the overall picture, as minuscule reasons as fighting over the power of a local government, it's only about the will of the people. It's only about upholding constitutionalism as much as possible. It's only respecting the constitutional order. So, the attempts, as I said earlier, were squarely dictatorial, and the current efforts in Tigray in very limited local governments are to challenge dictatorship and to uphold rule of law, constitutionalism, democracy, and the will of the people. And hence, there is nothing that can take anyone to invite, let alone intervention, even for an external opinion, in the views of the TPLF. But there is one thing that needs some attention, because there seems to be some kind of misunderstanding regarding the nature of the Tigray Interim Regional Administration. Many compatriots from outside sometimes mistakenly treat Tigray as some kind of independent country with an armed forces, with a president or a head of a government serving as the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. That's a gross mistake. The Tigray armed forces are, of course, the constant members of the Tigray Interim Regional Administration, among many other actors, political actors in Tigray, and they are, according to the Koha, and according to the will of the overwhelming majority. I would even dare say almost all Tigrayans from all walks of life, they want to see the contents of the Koha being implemented, and then they want to go back to their whatever they used to do. I know many of them had a good means of livelihood, and many of them have, the youngsters in particular, have different aspirations. But someone who is a parallel, who used to, actually, he doesn't even represent where he came from anymore, but the one who was supposed to lead the Tigray Interim Regional Administration was very adamant enough to attempt to deprive the TDF, the leadership it's known for commanding. Very experienced, very committed military people, including top-level generals, with amazing records, both within Tigray, Ethiopia, and even Africa, the world, in many peacekeeping missions and so on, for their bravery, discipline, military skills, and so on. He was adamant enough to target a parallel constituent body, and in fact, a body that's much held for paying dearly to save Tigray, and liquidate it at the end of the day. And this was happening in the middle of nowhere. As I said earlier, it's our wish to see the Koha to be fully implemented, and for everyone to go to their people, get reintegrated, and come back to their livelihoods, or start new livelihoods. But unfortunately, instead of focusing on the main thing that is being dearly awaited by the people of Tigray and all political forces in Tigray, some tend to target Tigray's capabilities. And for that matter, we believe this also endangers not only Tigray, but Ethiopia and beyond, because this is an open call for violence, while we have plenty of them. Tigray is relatively still very peaceful. Of course, the people of Tigray want more justice, more tranquility, better, maybe democracy, service delivery, and so on. But as if the neighborhood doesn't have enough violence, we hear people who were supposed to act responsibly calling for more violence, which is very unfortunate, which is unfounded, which we believe should be condemned. And by the way, we want to extend an open call for all stakeholders, be they from within or from outside, to see for themselves. They can establish, for example, a team that can investigate and check what's going on in Tigray, because we know there are plenty of allegations as if something extraordinary, violent thing is happening. We all here know that this is not true, but maybe in case there are some people who don't really know the details, in case there are some people who are yet confused, in case there are people who still are of some suspicion, we extend our open call for anybody to come, observe, weigh the situation in Tigray and beyond, and then, of course, support in any way they deem is appropriate. I think, as my comrade Emmanuel stated earlier in Tigrinya, some have unfortunately gone to the extent of recommending some measures against the very people they pretentiously stood for. Some were mentioning issues of budget, as if the budget is some kind of charity coming from elsewhere, and as if Tigray is not contributing to the economy and so on. We know the details. We know how much Tigray contributes. We know what Tigray deserves. But again, I mean, the demand of the people of Tigray is for better integration, for more representation, for more say in the decision-making process. And unfortunately, others are spinning things in a very wrong direction. We believe this is obviously very wrong, needs to be corrected in due time. And of course, with unity, with awareness both within and from outside, this will be of minimal influence to the stability, peace, and of course the tranquility of Tigray.